Hello, hello. Welcome to the Crowdcast for this week. I'm Joy Duling from the Joy membership, and I am glad you are here, whether you are here live or you are watching the replay. So, today is the topic for today is to see what we can learn from watching the competition. And as I started kind of prepping my thoughts for this, I wanted to just initially lay out two really big cautions around this topic because the whole idea of watching the competition can sometimes make people a little squeamish because they're like, well, if I'm watching my competition, then they're watching me. And like, how do we not copy each other? And, does watching the competition stifle innovation? And, all sorts of complexities like that. So I have two cautions for you. First of all, if you don't do it effectively, watching the competition too closely can slow you down. It absolutely can. As I was starting to write the article for this next week on this topic, the image that was in my brain was something I had seen. Gosh, it's probably been several years ago now. And I tried to find that image, and Google just was not cooperating. I couldn't find it, but I remember it so vividly in my brain. And it was of runners. And one of the runners who was barely in the lead, instead of focusing on the finish line in front of him, he was kind of looking off to the side, watching the people coming up behind him. And it was an image that I think will always stick in my brain as like what we don't want to be doing when we are pushing forward toward the finish line. Because if you're watching the competition too closely when you're running the race, it kind of pulls you off of your own race pace. So I couldn't find that image, but it stuck in my brain. If somebody finds it, post a link so that we can see it. The only one that Google would bring up was a more recent one from the Olympics when you had, I think it was Bolt, who just as he was about to pass the finish line, he like looked to the side and smiled real big, like, hey, I'm at the lead of the pack. So that's the only one I could find. But this other one was just kind of the agony of, being in front, but still keeping your eye on the competition. So that's the first thing, that if you are too focused on the competition, it can slow you down, and you don't want that to happen. The second rule is that you aren't watching your competition to duplicate, you're watching your competition to differentiate. And so, it's not about copying what the competition is doing. It's about using it to inform your decision-making and how you innovate for your own organization. So with those two cautions in mind, here are 4 things that I think you can learn from watching other organizations that serve your audience. So the first one I think is fairly obvious, and that is hot topics. So if they're engaging in social media, it's very easy to see what sort of content they're putting out there that is sparking interactions. So where are they getting shares? Where are they getting likes? What are the conversations that are happening? Being able to recognize what conversations are important to your audience allows you not to repeat those conversations, but to make sure that you are aware of them and you can go deeper on them or find another angle at that topic. So those hot topics can very much inform where you're going strategically. It will also tell you the most pressing problems that your audience is facing, so that as you're thinking about your own programs and offerings for, let's say, the coming year, you have a really clear idea of what's going to resonate with people. So hot topics is the first thing that you can learn from the competition. The second thing that you can learn from your competition is actually the opposite of hot topics. You can identify where there are gaps. Where are there conversations that aren't being addressed? What are people not talking about? Is there an angle that's not being part of the conversation? So, for example, maybe your competitor association is, talking a lot about, a particular piece of legislation that's making its way through the process and the advocacy that's necessary to get that legislation changed. But they're not talking about, well, what happens if this legislation does pass and we have to be prepared for that? Like, what are the steps to prepare for it? So by identifying that gap, you can actually be the resource that your members are able to turn to for the real practical guidance around kind of the implementation of that effect. So those are the types of things that you can watch for in gaps. Another example that comes to mind for me is, I'm part of several different kind of national organizations that serve the association market. And one topic that comes up all the time and often gets ineffective responses is kind of, what association management software should I use? Our organization is looking to change. What are you using? What should we use? And those topics, those questions, when they're posted, tend to get a lot of engagement, but I don't know that it's helpful engagement, because you'll have, 20 people jump on saying, our organization uses this and our organization uses that. And, we use this one and it was really bad. But there's no kind of connection to what the person who posted the question, like, what are their actual needs? So as I look at that, even though it's a hot topic, there's a gap there, because the person who's asking the question really isn't getting something that's going to be helpful to them. So if I wanted to jump into that gap, a good thing for me to do would be to kind of, prepare a guide or some sort of resource that maps, okay, if this is the member experience that you want to provide, here are the software solutions that are probably going to be the best fit for delivering that experience. In that way, I'm taking it from, this is what has worked for, us or, them, and I'm tying it very specifically to what their organization actually needs. So that's a gap that I can fill, that I've identified by watching the conversations that are happening with my competing organizations. The third thing that you can be watching your competitors and learning from is connection opportunities. So where are they connecting with the audience? So are they doing things like guest posts? Do they participate in industry events? How widely do they do digital marketing? Do they have strategic partnerships or alignments with other associations, other industry groups, those sorts of things? Basically, where are they and how are they getting out in front of the audience? Now, you are not looking to replicate those things. You are looking for gaps, other ways to get in front of the audience that are perhaps different than what the competition is doing. So let's say you lead an education association and your competing association, another association that serves that market, they're partnering with local libraries. Well, perhaps instead of partnering with local libraries, you partner with, another organization that's focused on national literacy. Or instead of focusing on, live local connections, you go digital. It's all about kind of mapping out where's your competition and where can you be to get effective results. And then that leads right into the fourth thing, which is marketing messages. You want to look at what are the messages that your competition is sending to try to attract people to their organization. Obviously, they're trying to do the same thing that you're trying to do. They want people to join, engage, and renew. So, how are they doing that? And how effectively are they doing that? So, the best analogy that I've heard about this particular challenge is, imagine you've broken down on the side of the road. Maybe you got a flat tire, you ran out of gas, something like that. And you call roadside assistance to come help you. And when roadside assistance arrives, what they are talking about with you is how wonderful their tow truck is. Look, it has, these features and these great tires and this wonderful little hook to connect people up. As someone who has a problem that needs to be fixed, you probably don't care about any of those things. You really just want gas put in your tank or your tire repaired or something like that. So often when you look at your competition, you will find that they are describing their tow truck. This is all the wonderful things that our association does, but they're not specifically talking about how they solve the problems or giving examples of problems that they have solved for the audience. So you can take that completely different angle of, let's explain how we're going to get gas in your tank or how we're going to fix your tire. And it completely shifts the conversation off of you as an organization onto how you actually help. So those are 4 things I think you can learn from watching your competition without sabotaging your own progress. But it's a matter of differentiating and not duplicating and just strategically thinking about where they are, what they're doing, and how you can do it better, fill gaps, those sorts of things. So that's what I had to share with you today. I hope you find it helpful. Overall, I hope you're enjoying this Crowdcast series. My goal with this each week is to bring you a topic that you can just take a little pause in your day and maybe think about something a little differently. Maybe it'll inspire some action or some conversation with others in your organization. And if it does that, then I've been very successful in my goal of bringing this to you. So I would love to hear your thoughts in the chat window. Let me know if something has resonated with you, and I look forward to seeing you back here next week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.